Welcome to BSW's Tech Dive. Tech Dive.
Submerge the ship.
The show goes technically deep into products you care about. The new, the old, the newish. So put on your gear, close up the hatch, and prepare to
Dive. Submerge the ship.
And now, here's John.
And welcome to this edition of BSW Tech Dive. I am John Lynch, Director of Business Development here at Broadcast Supply Worldwide, BSWUSA.com. Our topic today is ClearCom, and our guest is the Pacific Northwest Regional Sales Manager for ClearCom, Jay Wallace. And Jay, you may not know this, but I do have kind of a lengthy history with ClearCom, sort of. Okay. So I used to be involved with a annual theatrical production for several years in Washington State. So every year, about a month or so before, we'd call a company in Seattle, hey, we need to rent a intercom system so we can get our tech crew working on the show. Always was A, wired, B, ClearCom. That was it. So I figured, okay, this is what these guys do, and that's fine. So now I come to BSW, and here we are in another century, and one of my biggest clients has nothing to do with theater, nothing to do with broadcast or podcasting or pro audio, whatever. They're in manufacturing and final assembly, and they got all these people on assembly lines working with wireless intercom gear. Never would have thought of that until I came here and been working with that customer. So just tells me that ClearCom is into a lot of different stuff.
We certainly are. You know, the company started 50 years ago in San Francisco. The original owner of ClearCom and his chief engineer ran the Avalon Ballroom, one of the rock and roll clubs in downtown San Francisco. And
wait a minute. You and I can remember the Avalon Ballroom. Maybe some of our listeners may not, but we do.
Not. Well, the Avalon Ballroom was a big deal in 1968.
Yep. Oh, yes.
And that's where all of the acts came through. And and one day they're shouting between the front of house mixed position and backstage. And Charlie Button, our brilliant engineer, said, I think I can build a set of headsets and belt packs that would work on 30 volts and connect with a standard microphone cable and get a full duplex, normal level and loud enough for rock and roll. And I think I can build those. And they did. And then as the acts would come through the Avalon, they would get a look at these things and go, could you build us some of those for us to take on tour with us?
Take it with them. Okay, sure.
And they said, yeah, I think we can do that. And that's how it all started. And then a few years later, we had a phone call came into ClearCom in the office, and the person at ClearCom put them on hold and said, hey, there's somebody here with a TV station. Do we sell intercom to TV stations? And it's like, yeah, I think we do.
There you go.
That's how that started. So, and now, like you mentioned, manufacturing. So people are on assembly lines, potentially in a noisier environment. They need to have hands-free communication. They need to have it full duplex. So if something goes awry on the assembly line, they can shout to one of their coworkers and have them come and help, or just, pass instructions. It's a very efficient way to do business. So we're in manufacturing. We've got military, aerospace, government accounts. We're in the medical field in cath labs where doctors and technicians and nurses can communicate hands-free in a normal tone of voice. So it's very efficient.
So it's not like we see on the
broadcasting is still the bulk of our business.
It's not like but it's not like we see on the Korean War MASH TV show as far as what's going on in the medical profession. They're all wireless too. I mean, it's just incredible what's going on.
Yeah. It's acoustic wireless, and if they had wireless equipment, they wouldn't have to shout. They could talk in normal voices. They can literally leave the tent to go out to a supply tent and still be in communication with the doctor. So their efficiency would be much improved. The problem there, John, as you well know, the stuff would have to be down at 26 megahertz with very long antennas and really not appropriate or proper for a wireless intercom system. And that there's nowhere to attach them on the scrubs at that point.
Well, there's something else that's going on here that we've been dealing with at BSW for years, and that's our ever-lovable Federal Communications Commission. They have absconded, as my word for it, with some wireless spectrum that we used to use in wireless microphones, and now it's over onto the cellular phone side of things. But
Right.
you've probably had to deal with the same issue.
Absolutely. Our earlier equipment was VHF in the old days. Then it went to a VH-UHF split. And then probably 25 years ago, the all UHF synthesized systems hit the market, which was our WBS 670 and 680 product, which we did very well with. It was rock solid. It was durable. It was easy to set up. There was a spectrum scanning capability to it. So if you went to a venue, you could hit the button and it would give you some ideas about what might be a good frequency to use. It had some issues. Battery life was one, antennas that would get lost or broken. But then the FCC basically came and said, yeah, 700 megahertz is going away. Now, a few years later, 600 went away. So we made the decision at that point to look for other spectrum that wouldn't be affected by spectrum auctions. Our current products operate in the 1.9 gigahertz as a system, 2.4 gigahertz frequency hopping spread spectrum, and last year we introduced a wireless system called Edge that's in the 5 gigahertz spectrum. So we avoid all of the frequency coordination issues with wireless mics and IFBs and in-ear monitors, and we avoid the chances of this becoming obsolete from the Federal Communications Commission. These operate in bands that are legal. Some are not legal all over the world, so we have to be careful about speccing something travel abroad. But in North America, all three of those are perfectly legal.
Okay, so now you've got those three groups that you can work with. And I'm watching this show and wondering, okay, Jay Wallace, which of those frequency blocks do I need to be in?
Yeah. So we ask a few qualifying questions because we offer the largest variety of different wireless systems on the market. So the first question I would ask is, where is this system going to operate? Where is it going to live? Is it going to be a fixed facility or is it going to travel? If it is going to travel, where are we going with it? Because if we're, let's say we're going to take it to Japan, the 1.9 gigahertz DEC system in Japan is different from the US, and the Japanese are picky about what you're going to bring into their country and use. They pay attention. I would ask about what the coverage area requirements are. Are we talking about a single studio or a single theater space, line of sight? Are we talking about multiple spaces? Are we talking about multiple floors? How many users are going to be on the system? Because there are some limitations based on the type of systems we sell. And number of intercom channels, discrete intercom channels. Is everyone going to be on the same party line, or do we need to have separate channels for, say, audio and video and tech and lighting? We can make that happen. It's not a problem. Are we going to connect to a wired intercom system, either mine or brand X? With answers to those questions, we can steer the conversation to the direct product offering and save time and grief. Whatever we specify, we want to make sure that it's going to provide the feature set and the operating characteristics that the client needs, obviously, right off the bat.
Well, wait a minute. You said something that's also important. If somebody's got an existing system and it's not ClearCom, it's not necessarily that they couldn't get ClearCom to add to it. It sounds like they can.
It's not a deal breaker, John. It's not a deal breaker.
Now, you also said something about frequency coordination and things of that nature, which we run into all the time at like professional football games where there's wireless stuff used all over the place. You got to go through the Society of Broadcast Engineers and find out what's the space available to do something at that particular venue, that particular weekend or whatever. When you're talking frequency coordination, is it kind of similar?
It's very similar.
Okay.
So we could spend another show talking about the early days of pre-SB frequency coordination at NFL venues. I was fortunate enough to be with the Dallas Cowboys for 11 seasons, starting in '89. So back in those days, coordination was kind of ad hoc. We would go into a stadium, and I would go to the sound engineers, and I would go to CBS television, and we would do our own. And obviously, that's very well regulated, but it's the same thing. I want to know what's being used in the area. Fortunately for us now, at 1.9 and at 2.4 and to some degree at 5, I don't have to worry about coordination with wireless microphones and in-ear monitors and IFBs, but in the case of 5 gigahertz, I do have to know what else is being used in the area, and I also have to take into consideration some shared spectrum with weather radars.
Wow.
Our equipment will help with that. Others are a little more plug and play.
Well, amazing the things that you have to deal with just to be able to shoehorn somebody into an area to be able to operate.
Absolutely. Absolutely true.
Jay, it's been a pleasure talking with you. Thank you for sharing what's going on with ClearCom in the wireless mode. And we thank you for joining us. Our guest has been Jay Wallace, Pacific Northwest Regional Sales Manager for ClearCom. And I'm John Lynch. Thanks for joining us.
Baby, turn